Nice to see you, nice to meet you, and we are happy to be here with you. My name is Mary. I'm co-founder of the HRT Factory. We created our webinars and we try to do it useful and practical for you. And our mission is to help you to transform your HR business processes. And that's why we collect great speakers, practical cases, and awesome partners. Andrew, he's co-founder of the HRT Factory Project too. And actually, he's a great person. He's a big professional.
Thanks, Masha. Yeah, I'll try to keep up with the great person label. So my name is Andrew, and my work is actually to help companies to adapt and implement HR technology to transform their processes, to go through the digital transformation. But also I talk a lot to clients about like all the challenges they face in their HR profession. And currently most popular topic that came up more often was the retention. Really, okay, you help me to find and hire more people using digital tools, but how about retaining them? For how long they will stick, and will they be motivated enough? Do they stay or do they leave? Let me introduce Andrea Hopper, the founder of AHA Recruiting Experts and the author of a best-selling book, Hire, which is, by the way, available on the Amazon.
Thank you, Andrew and Mary. It's just so great to be here, and I really appreciate the two of you and HR Tech Factory for putting this all together. And thank you to everybody who's here. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I know we're going to start with a quick poll. If you were to hire somebody today, what do you think the chances are, the percentage of that likeliness that that person will still be with you in a year? Okay, so looks like about 20% of you, about 9% think it'll only about 20% chance of them still being with you. About just under half, 45% think there's a 40% chance. Another 9% of you think there's a 60% chance, and 36% of you feel there's a 90% chance that they'll be with you a year from now. Here's a study that came out recently by Grant Thornton that I just wanted to share. And some of you may have heard of it because it's been in a lot of news items lately. But they polled and they learned that 20% of American workers that took on a new job in the past 12 months, of that 21%, 40% of those people are already actively looking for another job. And this doesn't even include people who were working prior to that 12 months. These are just the people who took on a new job in the last 12 months. So we do have a lot of people looking to find what is the best fit for them. And so we're going to talk about different ways to set up your hiring process to get people who will want to stay with you a while and who are a better fit and you'll help attract the best people for what your needs are. So first, let's chat just briefly. Why do employees leave? This is one of my favorite slides, by the way. So the same study found that 34% were looking for work-life balance. I always find that a little misleading because I feel like everybody defines work-life balance differently. And about 40% said they were offered more than a 10% raise. So we are seeing compensation go up considerably, especially since the pandemic. And then they also found that people are looking for opportunities for advancement, some better benefits, and of course, greater autonomy, which plugs in a lot to that work-life balance. But I want to briefly talk about what we're seeing at AHA. So we started surveying our candidates. We placed about 165 candidates or new hires last year in 2021, and we've been following up with them about every 3 months. And we want to hear about their experience. Did it end up being a good fit for them? And what have been the things that they found maybe a little challenging or has made them think about looking for another job. And these are the things that we were hearing. We hear a lot, the expectations just were not clear to me when I first started. I don't really know what outcomes my employer is looking for. I don't know what I need to do to be successful in this job. Another one we hear a lot is the job wasn't as originally described. You know, it was very clear to me during the recruitment process, but then when I started, the job completely changed. I wasn't given enough resources or training to do the job effectively. And then from the people who left, they said they found a job more in line with their career, where they saw themselves going. And of course, as we saw from the other study, they found a job that pays more. So I just thought it was interesting to share what, you know, a large study found, but also what we're hearing at AHA. So again, this is me, and we're going to focus today on three steps to hiring. And if you do those right, they'll increase the retention, not only increase the quality of candidates that you attract to your position, but increase the retention, how long that they stay with you. Now, the one thing I always like to say when I start any sort of training is this is about progress, not perfection. Everybody's unique. I love saying that people are wonderfully messy. We all have a lot of things going on in our lives. So when you're talking about hiring and when you're talking about engaging people, you want to have a process that will help, that if you follow it regularly and you know it gets results, that will increase your progress. So we'll get you much better results in the end. It might not be perfect, but it will get you further. So here are the three steps we're going to touch on today. First one is about discovery. Who is it that you need to move your organization forward or for your particular position? But it's also going to be discovery about what you have to offer as an employer. The next is about how do you start developing your recruitment plan? And we're going to dig into one piece of it, and that's developing the job posting. And lastly, we'll talk about the screening process, and we're going to dig in about how to construct a very good interview question so that you can learn what you need to learn from the candidates. And then while we won't talk in deep about it, you have to execute. So you will walk away with actionable tips today. And I just ask that you take at least one or two of those that you decide you're going to execute on, because otherwise you won't make any progress. Step one, discover who you need. Like I said before, this is about what you as an employer bring to the table. What makes you unique? What makes you an employer of choice? And then also, what do you expect from your employees in return? If you don't do this work first, it is very difficult to, one, attract the right people, and two, recognize them when they're in front of you. And this is the biggest mistake I see employers make every single day. You know, we have a lot on our plates as leaders, and we just want to fill a position. We know we have more capacity where we need to put a person in, but we don't think through exactly what we need, and that just leads us to getting the wrong person. In order to do discovery, there are 6 questions that we typically walk through with our clients. And then there are other questions that we use to bring them out, to really bring stories out of people to get these 6 questions asked. So we're going to briefly walk through these 6 questions. And if this is your starting point, and if you just take these 6 questions away, and feel free to do a screenshot and go back and just briefly answer this. Nothing has to be perfect. Everything that I shared today, don't worry about, well, I can't get it perfect. I don't have time to get it perfect, so I'm not going to do it. Just put some effort into it, and I promise it will move the needle for you. So our first question is very basic, but it's so important. Why does this position even exist? You know, what's the purpose of it? How does it contribute to the mission. And I have a little example for you. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is not perfect. And it doesn't have to be very deep. We chose one. Account manager is the job title. The job purpose for this particular company is to ensure that clients' expectations are exceeded. That's it. That's the whole purpose of this position. As we go further, we will get a little more detailed and granular about what that means. But the overall job purpose is to ensure the client's expectations are exceeded. And you can see what their mission is there. So then you go to the next part, the next question. And again, we are going through these fairly quickly. What are the results? What are the outcomes you're looking for from this position? Do you even ask yourself before you start interviewing people, what do they need to accomplish in the first 90 days or the first 30 days in order for them to be successful? So you want to think about what are you looking for from this position? What needs to get done? Not just what experience and skills do they need, which we will get to, but how are they going to use those skills? What do you want them to use them for to accomplish? Another example, same position from before. Outcome, achieve monthly retention goals. Then you put a metric to it or a KPI. What is that retention goal? Specifically, retain 85% of client base. So it's very clear to you and to the new hire when you hire them what they need to accomplish. The next question is about skills and experience. This one, I typically see a long laundry list from employers. They don't have any trouble with this one. They know, they just list out every kind of skill and experience they want to see. I would make sure that you focus in on only 4 to 6 that you include in the posting. Figure out what are the skills and experience you truly need in order for them to accomplish the outcomes that you need from this position. Don't overwhelm in a job posting. I have seen job postings that are 4 pages long and 90% of it lists the experience and skills needed. That's just going to turn people off, and it's unreasonable. It's unrealistic. Also, when you're doing the skills and experience, think about what you can train for. If they're bringing other things to the plate, like the right attitude, like they are trainable, if you're set up, if you have the resources to train them on the skills that you need them to have, that will just open the playing field for the people you're looking at. Here's just a brief example. I don't want to spend too much time on it because most people know what skills and experience looks like. Specific behaviors. This is all about your core values. It's almost your operating manual, your guidelines. This is how everybody in your organization shows up every day. It's how they make decisions. If everybody is clued in to your core values and believes in them and lives them, then you don't have to worry about making every decision for your organization. You know that everybody in your team is going to make a decision that's in line with what you want, with what your core values are. So make sure that you're very clear on what those core values are and include them when you're recruiting, because one of the things that we focus on a lot at AHA is hiring people that fit in the culture of that organization. And it's different for every organization. And the core values, that's the piece of it. Here are some of the core values at AHA, just to give you an example. One of our core values we talk about a lot is to think like a detective. And you can see what we do is we try to bring it alive a little bit. This is how we define it in our job posting when we go out recruiting. This is how we define it for the team, so they can see what we mean by it. But we also dig in deeper. We make sure it's alive in the organization as much as possible. We bring it to the table at our all team meetings each week and talk about, one core value at each one, so that if think like a detective is the core value for this week, then people will bring examples of different members of the team living that value. And the more you get these stories, I recommend writing them down, because this actually becomes your scorecard when you're interviewing. The more you can write down specific examples of people living your core values or not living your core values on the other side of the page, the more you'll be able to recognize when you're interviewing whether or not the candidate in front of you will live these core values. And we'll get into that a little bit when we get to interviewing. The next question is about specific traits, and we call these success traits. So your core values are the values you want everybody in your organization to believe in and to live each day and to keep alive in the whole team. Your success traits are specific to the position. So there are certain success traits that you know people in the past, there might be characteristics that people in the past who have been in the position, who have been successful, have shown. So you know certain traits are specific to that position. And they're always action phrases. And I'm going to show you an example. This is a position we recruited for a couple of years ago. It was an executive assistant position for a very busy CEO. And she wanted someone who could help organize her and plan ahead, not even just for the next thing she had coming up, the next meeting she had come up, but someone who's at least 2 weeks ahead of that, someone who can anticipate what she's going to need, way ahead of where she is at that moment. And someone who's used to a little bit of chaos. She was a little all over the place because of the nature of her business. And so we took, and these are just 3 of them. I think we had about 5 or 6 success traits specific to this position that we gathered from her after doing the discovery session. And we tried to make it come alive with just a couple of sentences. But this also became, again, our interview rating sheet. As we interviewed candidates, we did have a lot of executive assistants with decades of experience for different CEOs, but often they came from large organizations where there was a lot of structure. And we knew they just weren't going to fit with this CEO and this type of company. And lastly, what do you bring to the table as employer? Why do people stay with you and why do they leave? Using the chaos part as an example, we've worked with companies who they say we're chaotic, we're entrepreneurial. That I worked with one company that had over 1,200 employees, but they still define themselves as almost functioning like a startup. And anybody that was hired need to be able to succeed in that environment. They need to be able to change on a dime when things change. And so some people will be successful in that environment and thrive on it, and others will hate it. You need to be very clear on what it's like to work at your place and who's it going to attract and who's it not going to attract. So now that you did a little bit of discovery work and you started to get an idea of not only who you need for your organization, but who you need for your position and what you bring to table as the employer, now it's time to start to create some of your marketing materials. Because recruiting is all about marketing. It's not about just taking a job posting and putting it out to job boards. That you still want to cover that, but that's just a small piece of marketing. However, I do want you to get the posting right. I feel the job posting is one of the most important pieces to start with. And let me be clear of the difference between a job posting and a job description, because I see so many people using a job description and posting it out there. A job description is an internal document. It's your agreement between your employee and you of what you're expecting for that position and how to function. A job posting is a marketing piece, and that they have aspects of the job description in it, but it's designed to attract the best person for the job and to turn away, to make some people say that's not for me if they're not the right fit. So we're going to walk through writing an irresistible job posting. And I want to invite you to stay to the end of this webinar, because at the end, I'm going to give you a QR code that will take you to our job posting wizard, which is very popular, for free, and will actually walk you through all these steps and give you examples. And when you're done, it takes about 20 minutes to fill out, so save the link. When you're done, it will actually email you your job posting in the correct format. So make sure you stay for that. It's well worth it. The first part of a job posting is to engage them. Keep in mind that when you push out a job posting to job boards, when somebody's doing a search, they're only going to see the first 1 or 2 lines to that posting. So you want to engage them immediately. Even if they click through, about 85% are not going to read past the first few sentences of your job posting unless it really engages them. We like to start job postings with a series of 4 or 5 questions. And often these questions are the last thing we write. If somebody can read those first 4 or 5 questions, and if that's all they read, they have a good feel for whether or not they're the right fit for the position, then that's ideal. That's an amazing job posting. Here's an example. And you can see I wrote on there, you want them to say, yes, that's me, or no, that's not me, and move on. So a few years ago, we recruited sous chefs for a large restaurant in California. And one of the things we knew that would be attractive to people, especially people who were looking for this as part of their career. They weren't just looking for a job, but they wanted to improve their skills in cooking. It's the first question we start with was, are you looking to work with an award-winning chef? Now, if somebody needs more experience, they're looking to be a culinary expert, they're looking for that to be their career track, that is going to attract them immediately, and they'll start to move on. The next part of a job posting is to tell them who you are, honestly, authentically. Don't go on and on. You can just use a few sentences here, but talk about what your mission is. What are you about? Then this is where we also, in this section, we list out the core values. So we typically will list them 1 line at a time. It will be a word or phrase, and then a sentence or 2 that brings it alive a little bit more, that is descriptive. And I'll tell you, time and time again, I have heard candidates say, you know what, I took the next step. I applied for this position because the core values I read, that's where I want to work. That's where I want my workplace to be, what I want it to be all about. And I don't have that right now. So that's a very important section. This is where your success traits come in. And we'll often say, you'll be successful in this position if you, or you are the ideal candidate if you are, and then list out an action phrase or a verb, and then describe it. So, one that came up for a position at one point was meticulous. It was a type of position where they needed somebody to be extremely detail-oriented and very meticulous. So that was one of the success traits that they were looking for. And then they had a sentence or 2 that describes why meticulous is important for this position. This is a section that might look a little bit like the job description, where you're pulling out maybe 4 to 6 responsibilities. What will they be doing on a regular basis? And if you have the outcomes clearly defined, you could put the outcomes there either instead of the responsibilities or in addition to. This is what you will accomplish in the next 90 days. That is very powerful. Of course, as I mentioned, this is a marketing piece. So you need to have what's in it for them. Why do they want to join? Go back to the question, what do you bring to the table as an employer? Do you have certain charities you support? Do you do certain outings? Do you have some incredible benefits? Maybe it's more about your mission. What is it that makes you unique as an employer that somebody would say, yeah, this is something I want to pursue? And lastly, when it comes to a job posting, which again is a marketing piece, please make sure you have a call to action. Say apply now. You know, if you really want to work alongside an award-winning chef, hit the submit button. Make it very easy for them to apply. Please don't ask for a cover letter. I know that's a controversial topic. If you need some sort of writing sample, you can ask them later on. Don't ask them to take an assessment right away. Don't ask them to do a lot of work at this first step. You are just courting them at this point. You're not even courting them. They're on the dating app, swiping right or left. I don't know which one is the one you want, but you want them to just start to get enticed and interested so that they'll take the next step. And then as you go through the process, if there are other things in your process that's important for you to determine if they're the right fit or they have the skills, you can add that in. Don't ask for it with the first initial step. People will, you won't get the response that you need. A lot of people are applying in the moment on their cell phone, so make it easy for them. The other thing is you want to make it very visual. So job postings, yes, you're pushing out in just text form and just copy, but you want to be on social media and in other places where your candidates spend time. So you want to make your marketing to be very visual and very easy, again, to apply. This is something we did for one of our clients a while ago. We always create very interactive visual landing pages for each job. So any way you can do that, you'll start to engage candidates. Once we started doing this, we got much better response rates in both sourcing and in applications on from social media. And we just also got a lot better quality applicants, because not only is it that last slide where you see the beginning, but as you scroll through, it brings the posting alive. So it's the same type of thing that you normally put in a posting, but it puts it in a very engaging, very easy to comprehend and just view format. And we've seen a big difference. Plus, it's very shareable on social media. So anything you can do on social media, and know the social media sites that your current employees hang out in, spend their time in, ask them. That's where you're going to find future candidates. We're going through this quickly here. So now we're on the last step, which is building a screening process. And we are going to talk about creating a great interview question. One of the first things you can do to improve the results you get from your interviewing is to make it more conversational. If we go back to the old way of interviewing where it's very directional, tell me this, describe this. I mean, I've even seen employers who will go out of their way to make it feel like the candidate is being grilled and make it like a big spotlight on them. That's just going to raise the defenses of the candidates. And what they'll do is they'll default to answers maybe that they've practiced and learned on the internet, things that they think you want to hear, but it won't show you who they truly are. So the more comfortable you can make them, the more their defenses will come down. It will feel like a conversation and they'll be more authentic. And that's what's going to help you figure out if they're the right person for your position. We start all of our questions, or most of our questions, with "could you share?" And this is these elements of the question that we're going over here came out of from Mark Murphy. He wrote a book called Hiring for Attitude that I highly recommend. And he talked a lot about this. So I wanted to give him credit there. So you're going to start most of your questions with, could you share? The next part is a specific example. This is your power phrase. When you're interviewing, if you're getting similar or the same responses to an interview question over and over again, then that's a terrible interview question. All of the candidate responses should be different from one another, because you want to be hearing past stories of how they've shown up. You want to know what they've done in different situations in the past. And if all of your candidates had the exact same experience, I'd wonder, were they all working at the same place? You know, a good question will get you different stories each time. And believe me, when you're doing a lot of interviewing, it makes it more interesting too than hearing the same or similar answers over and over again. So by asking for a specific example, you're asking for them to share a story with you with lots of details. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go through. I have some examples here to share with you. So here's one where the employer was looking for someone who really takes ownership of the situation. So one question we recommended for them was, could you share a specific example of a time at work where it wasn't clear who was responsible for a certain task? Now, what's different about this question is, one, you're asking for a specific example, and you want to really emphasize that part. And you're not telling them or asking them, and share with me how you resolved it. Because if you say something like that, you're essentially giving away the answer. You're leading them to the water. If you ask a question in this way and sort of leave it hanging a little bit, then you'll start to see a pattern where the people who really do take ownership on a regular basis are going to start sharing stories where they stepped up and took ownership and helped to solve the problem. The people who tend to complain because you didn't ask them to tell you how they resolved it, they will actually complain to you, and you'll start to get a good feel for who actually takes ownership on a regular basis and who doesn't. The next one is loves to learn, the next example. This is one that I love to use because we always are looking for people on our team who love to learn. Could you share a specific example of a time at work when you were asked to do something you didn't know how to do? Somebody who complains and doesn't really want to learn may actually share and complain about how they were asked to do something, they didn't know how to do it, and how their employer asked them to do it. Somebody who loves to learn, you'll see the excitement in their face about how they looked into something and they researched it and they figured out how to do it. And maybe they were successful, maybe they weren't, but they did what they could and they learned from it. And I do want to mention, not every story is going to be a success story. Some are going to, they may talk about the mistakes they made, and that's okay, as long as they also talk about what they learned from it and what steps they took so that they don't make the same mistake in the future. And my third example here is about emotional intelligence. We had this question when we were recruiting for a bridal shop. We were looking for bridal stylists. And the employer said, a lot of our brides come in and they're very emotional, not just because they're stressed about the wedding, but often there might have been a recent death in the family. Maybe a parent had passed away and they're not there for the wedding. There are lots of things that can come up while they're shopping for their wedding dress. And they needed bridal stylists who were emotionally intelligent, who could take a moment and be there for them and not just wash it away. And so we started asking the candidates, could you share a specific example of a time at work when a customer became emotional or upset with you. And this brings up, it could bring up stories about a disgruntled customer, and you could hear candidates start to complain about that, or you could hear candidates start to talk about somebody who broke down on them and how they were able to support them and get them through that moment and then move things along for them. It can be very powerful hearing the responses, and these are subtle differences and asking questions, but once you start doing it, you'll hear a big difference in your responses. Even though you ask for specific experiences, sometimes people will still speak broadly. So you need to probe them a little bit. So here are a few questions that we recommend. You can say, can you walk me through what happened? What happened next? What does that look like to you? That's one of my favorite questions, because we often assume that somebody says something and we understand what they mean by it, and they might have a completely different perception. So I always say, put on your curiosity hat, have a sign on, in front of you or somewhere that you can see that reminds you to be curious. If somebody says something to you and your kind of antenna goes up and you think you know what they mean, but you're not sure, probe a little. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? I want to make sure I'm really understanding what you're saying. What does that look like to you? When you say you always go above and beyond for a customer, what does that mean? Walk me through a specific instance with a customer. Always be curious. When you're starting to score the candidate responses, and first of all, I highly recommend that you do take notes or have some sort of transcription recording that you get permission from the candidate from going. You're not judging the responses as they come in. The thing, you want to be looking for patterns at the end. So take as many notes as you can, but you want the notes to write down specifically the things they say, so that you can review them more objectively later. If you're judgmental in the moment, it may start to sway how you look at some of the other responses later on. And don't be swayed by hypotheticals. Listen for and probe for those specific examples. If people are saying a lot of "you should do this" or "we did that," probe to find out what they specifically did. Now, I do know sometimes, we're trained to always say "we," and that's great. It's a team mentality. I'll always give the candidate permission to say "I," and as they're telling a story, if they say "we" a lot, I always say, I appreciate that you're saying "we" and that you have a team mentality. We do here as well. But this is an interview, and I want to hear your actions during this story. I want to know exactly who did what and what you did. So I'm going to give you permission to say "I" for the things that you specifically did. And that, that typically will get them saying "I." Sometimes they'll go back to "we" without thinking about it, and then they'll laugh and correct themselves. But if they keep saying "we" after that, I just let it go, and they probably aren't the right fit for the job. You want to listen for context, actions, and results. And I always say CAR. Just write CAR on your sheet. C is the situation. Learn about, how did the problem start? How did the candidate become aware of the situation or the problem? That's what goes under C. And by listening for these three things, you're making sure you're getting everything you need to evaluate the response. The next is the actions. We've been talking a lot about that. Write down exactly the actions the candidate took. Make sure you understand what that was. And then, of course, you want to learn what the results were. What were the end results? What was the outcome? And again, it ties back to discovery. You need to know what great looks like at your organization before you can even start interviewing. And then when you're interviewing, you're looking for patterns. You're looking for, in most of their stories, are they speaking like they felt like they had control over the outcome, or are they blaming others and feel like that showed that they did not feel they had any control over it? Are you listening for specific behaviors? And the specific behaviors are the ones that you already see from people on your job, or you want to see from people on your job. And like I said, you're listening for patterns. Nobody is perfect. So once you go back and start to review the responses, you're looking for 80 to 85% in line with the outcome that you want from this person. Don't expect 100% of all of the questions to be answered perfectly. And I already mentioned to always be curious. Now, this is a question series that a lot of the interviewing and hiring gurus recommend. And it's similar, you know, each one is slightly different in how they recommend it, but on the whole, it's fairly similar. And we recommend that you ask these questions in this order, pretty much saying the words exactly as they are to every candidate, no matter the position. Sometimes you might need to skew it a little bit if this is an entry-level job and it's their first job, but you can ask about internships or activities in school and things like that. And you want to ask, if you can, about the last 3 to 5 positions, the same series. So the first thing you need to do is confirm that everything is correct on the resume. So I always say, you know, okay, right now it says you're working at Caltech on your resume, and the dates are such and such and such and such. Is this, you know, correct? Well, often you may hear that they left months before and the resume is not up to date. So you want to make sure that you have that correct. And then you go through these questions and you ask them the reason they left. Then you also ask their supervisor's name and you ask them to spell it. I don't care if it's Mary Smith or something you think you know how to spell, you ask them to spell it. And the reason for that is it puts in their head that you're probably gonna call this person. Whether you plan to call them or not, you wanna make sure you make the candidate think that you're gonna call them. Then you ask them to tell you a little bit about your boss. Listen to what they say, because the things they say they like about their boss or they specifically bring up, it's probably important to them. And then when I talk to Mary, what will she tell me your strengths are? This is very different than asking the candidate what they think their strengths are, because now they have in their head, you're actually going to call Mary to find out what their strengths are. And when I talk to Mary, what are some areas she'll say she'd like to see you improve in? So you want to make sure you go through the same question series for the last 3 to 5 positions. I also threw on here some job fit questions. This is important for both finding an idea of if they're going to accept an offer from you, if you do make them an offer, and it also gives you information to make that offer more appealing. And it helps with retention as well. It gives you an idea of what is going to make them want to stay and what's going to make them not stay. And this is an interesting question. I actually have not used the first question before, but I learned it on a webinar months ago from another recruiter. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. I think I'm going to add it to my process and to my training. Could you share the 5 things you would change about your job if you were the boss? You know, by asking for 5, you're asking them to really dig deep. And the more information you get from that, and take detailed notes, because as you listen, 1, it will tell you if they mention a few things that maybe are similar at your position, so they might not like it, or are different at your position, which is good for them, that you can share in the job offer. Because you may find, especially in this job market, we are seeing a lot more counter offers happening. And so while you're doing these interviews, especially if you're starting to like a candidate, you want to be taking down information that they say, things that they say that you can share back with them when you're sharing the offer. Because if they come back to you and say, well, my boss just offered me a 10% raise over what you're offering me, you can share with them, well, didn't you share with us during the interview that the reason you were looking to leave was because your boss is always micromanaging you and you were looking for more autonomy? Plus you wanted more flexibility in your schedule and your boss doesn't allow that. Did your boss say that he was going to change those things too? He's like, no, you're right. And I've seen this happen before, and it does change, it does help frame things for the candidates so that they know it's best to come work for you. And then we like to ask, what types of jobs are you currently applying to? And I love asking, and which one is your preference? If they start talking about a job that, especially one that's a completely different type of job than what I'm offering, and they start getting excited and telling me that that's their favorite one, well, why am I even talking to them? And what have you enjoyed doing past jobs and what if you haven't? And again, that power phrase, specific example. And building on that some more to learn about their interest level, will you accept a counteroffer if extended? You can ask these things straight out. I'm a true believer in being straightforward. Don't play games with the candidate, ask them. And they may say, yeah, it kind of depends on the money. Or maybe they say no, but in that moment, they think no. But then when their boss actually does it, sometimes things change. Feel free to role play with them. If they say, no, I won't, you can even ask them, do you think that they might? Well, yeah, they might. Well, let's role play right now. I'm going to pretend I'm your boss and I'm offering you, 10% more money and a few other things. Let's role play you turning me down. Get them prepared for that situation. Most of them have never gone through it before, and it just throws them off. I was actually, I did a similar training for a bunch of entrepreneurs last week. And one of the CEOs who owns a very large company said to me, he's like, I did this with a candidate and she really wanted to leave her current employer. And we actually were offering her a lot more money. And we role played turning down the counteroffer. He did everything right. But what happened was this candidate went back to her original boss, who she happened to be friends with, and the boss just broke down and cried and begged her to stay. And she didn't know what to do. She stayed 2 more years, and then she left and went to this other gentleman's company because she just did it. So sometimes you don't know what's going to happen there. I don't think that happens often, but you never know. Has anything changed since the last time we've talked? Even if it's been a few days since you've talked to them, you never know what's come up during that time. So you want to make sure you're both still on the same page. And whenever you're trying to gauge interest level, one of the best ways is to ask them on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 to 10, 10 being I'm ready to go now, 1 being I'm not so sure about this position. What's your interest level in this position? It's very difficult for them to lie or to kind of, talk around that when you're asking them on a scale of 1 to 10. And it's always good to get a feel for where their head is at. So we very quickly touched on the 3 steps to help you attract the right people and hire and recognize the best people who are going to stay a while at your job or longer. Make sure you take some of these things. I want to hear, put it in the chat. Is there something that jumped out at you that you're going to go do in the next couple of weeks to execute on. Now, I did promise if you stayed till the end of my talk that you would get the QR code for the job posting wizard. So I'll leave this up for a minute so you can take the QR code down, or there is a link listed below it. So feel free to copy that down. But when you have time, go through it. Try to ask yourself the discovery questions first. It will make the job posting wizard a little easier, but even if you don't have time for that, the job posting wizard, I'm sure, will improve on whatever job posting you have now. And I can always go back to that, but does anybody, it is question time.
Yeah, as we are a small group, there was a kind of a like observation, not really a question before, from a person that left, and he was saying, yeah, with great resignation, pandemic, retirements, and now the issues with the economy, many people are rethinking things. And I suppose the question was those who left jobs and now feel the need to actually go back to work. When was this data complied, and are talent acquisition folks in companies open to working with retiree and others who left jobs feeling they were ready to retire but realize now they still need to work? So it's more of a, like, probably from your professional experience, kind of, can you share the observation?
Okay.
If the people are going back, as far as I understand.
Yes, we are seeing a lot more people starting to return to work. I just want to reread that question because I don't think I captured everything. So those who left jobs
are talent acquisition folks in companies open to working with retirees? And retirees and others who left jobs feeling they were ready to retire but realize now they still need to work.
I think so. I think it depends on the job and the requirements to do the job. One of the things that we're seeing, and I guess age figures into it, is software is changing so quickly. And with a lot of jobs, there are new tools coming out every year that can improve the experience overall. And so a lot of employers are looking for people who already know the new software or who are up to date or can learn it very quickly. And I think that one of the biggest concerns, what I've seen, this is my personal observation with that, is that, you know, if this person's been retired, if they've been out of the workforce for a little while, you know, are they up to date on the latest software, or can they learn it quickly?
All right, thank you. As we are a small group, I suggest if you have a question to ask to Andrea, just feel free to unmute your microphone and say your question. Right now, we have just, a couple of minutes for that.
I let everybody to unmute.
Okay.
That's why you could do it.
So if you do have a question, please feel free to step up and ask.
Has anybody taken anything away that they're going to implement?
Yeah, or maybe just share, what really some learning findings that you had, some insights from a speech. That would be very, very helpful.
We have a quiet group.
Yeah, probably we have a quiet group, or people just muted and stay there and we're gonna wait for recording to be sent out. So yeah, okay. I just wanted to wrap it up then.
I just wanted to share, and I know we're at the hour too, and I know people have to go, but I just wanted to share a quote I like to share at the end of all of my trainings or webinars. And this is from Simon Sinek. If you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they'll work for you with blood, sweat, and tears. I think that just sums up everything we talked about. And I think it's so true. I just want to thank everybody for coming, and I hope that you got something out of it that you can take away and make some improvements to your hiring results.
Oh,
And if you want, there's my website, and happy if you reach out to me.
yes, thank you for being here. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.